Have you ever tried to set one small boundary with your family and suddenly felt like you were betraying everyone you love? You ask for privacy, less criticism, a little more space, and your mind instantly tells you that you're being selfish, dramatic, or ungrateful. That reaction is something we refer to as a boundary guilt. And it doesn't automatically mean that your boundary is wrong. Now, here's the trap. You think setting a boundary changes how much you love your family, but it doesn't. It changes how much access they have to you. And today, you'll learn how to set that limit clearly without turning the conversation into a fight and what to do when your family pushes back. Family boundaries feel different because family relationships often come with pretty well established roles. Maybe you're the responsible one, the peacekeeper, the caretaker, the easy child who never caused problems. And when you grow older, your family may still expect you to play that same part. So when you start saying things like, I can't do that, or I'm not discussing this anymore, it can feel like a much bigger issue than a single conversation. It can feel like you're breaking the entire family system. You remember what happened last time you disappointed someone. Maybe they became angry. Maybe they withdrew. Maybe they called you selfish. And maybe you learned that keeping everyone comfortable was safer than expressing what you needed. So now, the moment you consider a boundary, you predict rejection. But love and unlimited access are not the same thing. You can love someone and still limit how they speak to you. You can care about your family and still protect your time, privacy, energy, and emotional health. A boundary doesn't say you don't matter. It says this is what I can participate in, and this is where I need to stop. So you finally say no. You decline a last-minute obligation, you refuse to discuss your relationship, you end a conversation that's become insulting. And then the guilt arrives. They're disappointed. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should apologize. And you treat that guilt as evidence that you did something wrong. But guilt can also be a reaction to doing something unfamiliar. If you've spent years making yourself responsible for everyone else's comfort, your first boundary will feel uncomfortable, even when it's reasonable. Now, you might have thousands of data points telling you that saying yes keeps you safe. Meanwhile, you may have very few examples of saying no and remaining connected. So no feels dangerous. Not necessarily because it is dangerous, but because it's new. Think about the difference between these two questions. Did I just hurt someone? And did someone dislike hearing the limit I was setting? Now, those are not the same question. You can communicate respectfully and still disappoint someone. You can be kind and still make someone uncomfortable. You can do the right thing for yourself and still feel guilty afterward. That guilt deserves compassion, but it does not automatically deserve control. Here's a small challenge. The next time guilt shows up after you set a boundary, ask yourself, what actual evidence do I have that I did something wrong? Not what do they think, not what might happen next. Question is, what actually happened? Did you insult them? Did you threaten them? Did you break a promise? Or did you simply stop overextending yourself? Those are very different things. Now, there's another reason family boundaries can create conflict. Many people communicate a demand when they think that they're communicating a boundary. A demand might sound like, you need to stop criticizing me, or you have to respect my privacy. The problem is that those statements focus on controlling the other person, and you cannot control whether someone understands, agrees with, or respects your limit. A boundary focuses on what you will do. Instead of saying, you need to stop criticizing me, you say, hey, I'm open to support, but if the conversation becomes insulting, I'll end it and try it again another day. Instead of saying, you have to stop asking me about my relationship, you might say, I'm keeping that part of my life private, so I'm not discussing it right now. Now, let's get one thing straight. A boundary is not a speech designed to make someone agree with you. It is a decision about your participation in the relationship. You are not announcing an expectation for what the other person will do. You are explaining what you will accept, what you will not participate in, and what you will do if that limit is ignored. That difference gives you back your power. So how do you actually say it? Use this three-part structure: care, limit, action. Part one is to lead with care. This is not required in every situation, especially if the relationship is unsafe. But in a relationship you want to preserve, it can reduce unnecessary defensiveness. You might say, I care about you and I want us to have a healthier relationship. Or perhaps, I want to be close to you, but I need our conversations to feel more respectful. You are explaining the purpose, not asking permission. Part two is to state the limit clearly. Keep this part short. You might say, I'm not discussing my personal finances anymore, or I won't continue conversations where I'm being insulted. Notice what these statements do not include. They do not include a 10-minute history of every time someone hurt you. They do not contain a list of evidence designed to win a trial. They simply state the limit. Now, part three is to name your action. This is the part that makes the boundary real. If this conversation becomes insulting, I'm going to end the call. Or if this topic comes up again, I'll change the subject or just leave the conversation entirely. This is what you will do if the boundary is not respected. So the full script might sound like this. I care about you and I want us to have a healthier relationship, but I'm not discussing my personal finances anymore. If the questions continue, I'm going to end the conversation and we can talk another time. Or you might say, I'm willing to talk about this, but not while I'm being insulted. If that continues, I'm going to end the call. Care, limit, action. You don't need to make the boundary sound perfect. You just need to make it clear enough to follow. Now, what happens when your family responds with, you've changed? After everything I've done for you, families shouldn't have boundaries, or why are you being so dramatic? This is where people pleasing usually takes over. You start explaining, then defending, then apologizing, then negotiating away the boundary that you just tried to set. Now here's a trap. You think the perfect explanation will make them understand. But someone who benefits from your lack of boundaries may not be looking for more information. They may be looking for the old version of you to return. So instead of creating a longer argument, simply repeat the limit calmly. I understand that you disagree, but my boundary is still the same. You do not need to convince them that your boundary is reasonable before you honor it. And the more you argue for your boundary, the more you accidentally turn it into a negotiation. Say it once, clarify if necessary, and then follow through. If you said you would end the call, then end the call. If you said you would leave, then leave. If you said you would respond tomorrow, then respond tomorrow. A boundary without follow through becomes a request that people learn that they can ignore. Now, not every family relationship can be repaired through one simple conversation. Some people will respect your limits, some will need some time, and some will repeatedly mock, punish, or ignore every boundary you set. That information matters. A healthy relationship can survive a reasonable limit. It may feel awkward at first, but there is room for repair, adjustment, and mutual respect. But if the relationship only works when you have no needs, no privacy, or no limits, then the problem is not your boundary. Sometimes the boundary needs to become less contact. Fewer personal details, shorter visits, only communicating by text, or taking a longer break from the relationship. Distance is not always punishment. Sometimes it's protection. And if there are threats, intimidation, stalking, or abuse, your priority is not creating the perfect boundary script. Your priority is safety and support. You can love someone and still decide that they do not have unlimited access to you. Those truths can exist together. Here's an exercise you can work on this week. Choose one low-risk family boundary and write down 3 things. What behavior is draining me? What limit do I need? And what will I do if the limit is ignored? Then condense all of that down to 1 or 2 sentences and practice saying it out loud. Keep in mind, your goal is not to make your family understand. Your goal is to communicate honestly and take responsibility for your own participation. You are not betraying your family by becoming honest about what you can and cannot carry. Love does not require unlimited access. Separate the actual evidence from the prediction. Did you truly do something wrong, or did someone simply dislike losing access to you? A boundary does not destroy the right relationship. It reveals whether the relationship can make room for the real you. And that's the difference between being connected and being consumed. I want to thank you for joining me today. I truly hope you got something out of this video. If you did, please consider hitting that like button and maybe throw a comment below identifying the one boundary that is most important for you to set in the coming week. Also, consider subscribing to the channel and check out our other videos about setting boundaries in relationships. I'm Chris Nakos, and I'll see you next time here on the C-Class Perspective.